Hello, guys. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are, or whichever part of the world. But yeah, hey everyone. Welcome to another edition of SEO Resellers KEX Plus webinar series, where we talk about all things digital marketing. And if you're here for the first time, thank you for joining us. And if you've been following us for quite a while, from the very beginning of this webinar series, thank you for your continued support. And today we will be discussing about the pillars of SEO, right? But before we dive in, we just have a few house rules that we'd like to cover. If you can switch over to that slide, Mr. Jeriel, thank you. So, let's keep this as a conversation, right? So a lot of what you guys will learn from here will depend on your interaction with us and with our industry experts over there, Jeriel and Bernard. So don't worry, you have questions, throw it anytime, right? We will take about 10 minutes to accommodate those questions towards the end of the conversation. Resources like recordings or slideshows from this webinar will be made available to you after the session, and we'll also upload it on YouTube, so watch out for that, right? So if you've been keeping up with KEX Plus, then you're already familiar with our speakers. Well, most especially Mr. Bernard here, Mr. Bernard, the managing partner at TrueLogic, sister company of SEO Reseller. Also our former general manager, circa 2009 to 2019, if I remember correctly.
2009 to 2019, right?
Right. How are you doing, Mr. Burns?
I'm doing excellent. Like on to different adventures, but yeah, thank you for having me again on this KEX session. My name is Bernard, and I'll be taking orders from table 13 later at the end of the session.
All right. Thank you. And we also have Jeriel, part of our learning and development team here at SEO Reseller. So one of our training specialists. So thank you guys. Welcome. How are you, Jeriel? I mean, I know you've just recently come from an event, I think, over the weekend.
Yeah, I came from Cebu for a cosplay event. So
Cool.
mainly I was there to do a review of the event and give the organizers some feedback on how they organize the event, stuff like that.
Right.
And it, I've never, I'm not used to the crowd anymore.
Right. Well, I mean,
It's been a while.
we all gotta
Yeah.
have jobs that empower our passions, right?
Right, yeah.
All right. So, well, yeah, I'll just throw it over to you guys so that you can start, talking about our subject matter. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, go for it. And thank you very much for everybody that's joining us today. I think you're in good hands in terms of who you're having conversations with when it comes to talking SEO. I've been doing it for over a decade, maybe 14, 15 years. So it's been a while. It's been a while. And I've had the privilege of working with Jeriel for over half a decade now.
Yeah.
Right. And you were an SEO before then, right?
Yep.
So a lot of I think the combined history between the two of us allows us to put some context into the conversation. So let's get started by asking a question. Who do you optimize for? Right? Like who are you optimizing for? Whether it's for your own brand, whether it's for your clients' businesses, who do you optimize for? And the correct answer to this sort of depends on, which circa you're answering it from, right? Right. So let's have a quick look, like in terms of who you optimize for. So back in the day, Google had a rule, right? And the rule was optimize for the audience, don't optimize for the bots. But of course, if you were an SEO in 2012, who listens to Google?
Right, exactly. They put everything on your website.
Right, because I
That
mean you can
works.
create great content, but the next guy with the keyword stuffy, hidden content, hidden keywords kind of guy.
Oh yeah, the
They're
JC Penny.
right. Like they're the guys that tend to rank better than you, right? So it sort of didn't make sense to follow Google's mantra about build for users, not for the bots. And so, I'll be the first to admit, I used to build for the bots, right? To a degree, I still do, but I think with Hummingbird, actually, it started with Panda, and then with
Panda.
Hummingbird, uh, it just made more sense to start building for users. And we'll get into what we mean when we say build for users versus building for bots.
And the thing about the current strategies right now, usually the question the question from earlier, it's just boils down to two answers. It's for the search engines, for the target audience. Later, again, we're gonna go through each one of those. Why do we think it's the users that we're supposed to target
Right.
first before we actually target the search engine?
Right. Now, not to say that this, by the way, is a false dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
It's not either or. You are supposed to optimize for users, but in a way that is visible
To
to
the search
bots,
engines, yeah.
right? Because I'm going to show you a couple of examples where this is what the user sees, but this is what the search engine sees. And that sort of doesn't help your cause when it comes to attracting traffic over to your website.
So going over the 4 pillars.
Yeah, which is what we decided to talk about. And fair warning to everybody that's listening to us and will be listening to the recordings. This is sort of like an introductory webinar, as we will talk about technical on-page content, off-page in significantly more detail. We had already talked about localization on a previous webinar, but we decided to create a series so that when you pitch to clients, you've got a better grounded understanding of how SEO works, and you're able to talk like an expert. Expert SEOs don't talk technical, they don't talk jargon, they talk very simple, down to earth concepts, right? So when we say the pillars of SEO, the pillars of SEO are always your technical SEO, your on-page SEO, your content, and your off-page. And then, plus your localization, because with some businesses, the goal is to drive foot traffic. Like the business model requires foot traffic in order to generate revenue for your client. But if you're e-commerce, if you're a publisher, then only the 4 pillars apply. Right now, grain of salt on the content we're about to share. There is some technical SEO involved in on-page, right? But I like to separate the technical SEO. Like I like to group some technical SEO into on-page and not into technical, because when I say technical SEO, I am specifically talking about the elements on a website that allows Google to crawl and index your website, which means their ranking weight is 0. The ranking weight is 0. These don't help you rank, but they are the ones that are essential to have in order for you to at least have a shot at being on page 1. So this is what we mean. So first off, let's talk technical SEO. And Jeriel, do you mind if we move the participant box over to the side of it? No, over there on the screen. So when we talk technical SEO, what we're talking about is it's not a ranking factor, right? Think of technical SEO as joining the lottery. You have 0 chance of winning the lottery. You have 0 chance of winning the first page lottery if you do not participate in the lottery. And this is sort of what technical SEO is. If you don't place a bet, you have no chances of winning. And technical SEO is the same, right? Like when you bet on the lottery, it does not give you a higher or lower chance at winning. It gives you a pretty random chance at winning. And technical SEO is the same. But if you don't bet, if you don't participate, if you don't have the right technical SEO, your chances of ranking are 0. So when you do technical SEO audits for your clients, is you're making sure that Google has the ability to scan or see the website. And it also makes sure that Google can remember the website. So let's dive into a bit more detail about what we mean by that, right? So here are a couple of things that happen on a technical background. And you don't need to explain these to your clients, but because this is an educational webinar, I wanted to explain them to you in very down-to-earth terms. When a user and a bot, like to a server, a user and a bot are precisely the same. A user and a bot are precisely the same. They're called user agents in the eyes of the server. And when a browser and a search bot interact with your server, they send a ping. The server has to ping back, right? And the best ping back that you can get from a server that holds a website is what's called the 200 signal. Think of a bot like a food delivery person, right? If they ring the doorbell at the right address and the right person picks up, that's a 200 signal, right? They went to the right address, they found the right person. That's a great analogy to a 200 signal. Another good signal would be a 300 signal, which means they went to the right address, they rang the doorbell, somebody picked up and told them, oh no, he doesn't live here, he lives next door. but ultimately the delivery guy finds the guy
Finds
you're
the right
looking for,
address,
right?
yes.
Like, so this is what you call a 301 redirect.
Mhm.
A 400 error is the delivery guy goes to the apartment, the building, they go to the right address. They ring the doorbell, somebody picks up and says, "Oh no, never heard of them before." And now you sort of don't know what to do with your delivery, right? So that's what you call a 400 error. The most common one is a 404. And 500 error is they go to the address and there's no building.
No building. It's just a
Right.
lump of grass.
Or a cliff. But there's no building, right? So, if a 400 is a 500 is a ruh-roh, that's a problem. Because 500 errors are what you call undisclosed server errors, meaning the server did not even send the right thing back to the browser, to the bot. And enough 500 errors that if Google detects enough 500 errors and it treats that as a quality signal against your website, right? Because imagine you're Google and you're thinking, okay, if this website cares about my users, then they would do everything in their power to make sure that their website is up, that their server is working.
And the people are going to the right place.
Right. Because I'm Google, right? I want you to search and find what you're looking for. So crawling is about Google being able to send a bot to your website and then being able to scan the content of your website. That is the
Right.
function of crawling. Now, once Google has scanned your site, the next thing it does is it commits you to memory. Because the magic of when you do search, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, when you perform a search, Google says, I am returning the searches in 0.02 seconds, in
Right.
0.3 seconds, in 0.4 seconds, in 0.05 seconds. And the reason it can render results that quickly is because Google is not calling the results from the internet. It is calling the results from memory, right? And Google's memory is called the index, literally named after the library. But it's called the index. But the best way to explain what the index is it is Google making a copy of your website in their own servers. It is Google making a copy of your own website based off of its front-end code inside its own servers. When we check for the index, there are two things that we look for. We try to take a look at how does Google remember the site? Because your users and you might see the site one way, and your users might see the site in another way, right? So there are two things we look at. First, let's talk cache. Let's go take an example. So here's an example of the KFC website, and KFC thinks the render on the left is what they and the users can see, but the image on the right is what is rendered on the Google search engine, which means Google cannot see the content. It can only see the nav and the footer. It cannot see any content in between, right? So to the brand, they think everything is fine, but in reality, it's not. There's no content, right? And content is the most powerful ranking factor. So the first thing we look at is, does Google and the user see the same thing? This is what we call the cache. But the next thing we look at is the caching rate. Notice the date on the right image where it says, this is the website as it appeared to us on date. If you want your website to rank on the first page, it is essential that says less than 3 days. When Google trusts a website, it indexes it frequently. It crawls it frequently. It indexes it frequently.
3 days is 3 days the most regular they want it to be.
Yeah, I would probably say at 7 days you have a chance at the first page, but not a chance of being on position 1 if it's greater than 3 days, right? So you want number 1, that you better get Google to trust you enough to crawl and index you every 3 days or less. Okay, so let's move on. Right, here's another way to figure out how Google tries to remember your website. This is called the site colon search. And what you're essentially asking the search engine to do is, show me everything you remember about this domain. Show me all of the content, all of the pages that you remember about this domain. And it's super important. It is super important that you be performing this check all the time. Because, like, take for example, if you had a website and you thought, okay, I've got for a fact you have 200 pages, right? And when you go there, you're saying Google is saying about 56 results.
That's gonna.
What happened to your other, right?
Well,
What happened to your other
150
one?
pages.
Right. Which is essentially missing. And that signals a lot, right? Like that means Google might not be finding valuable content on the website. It might not be allocating a good crawl budget to your website and a whole bunch of others. You may have made a big mistake when building your website, right? You might have told Google, no, don't index these pages
Right.
without meaning to, right? Because let's face it, devs are not SEOs.
Mhm.
Developers are not SEOs. They don't always know what they're doing as it impacts Google and search engines, right? So you want to be performing this also to find out, okay, so Google scans my site, it remembers my site, but how much of my site has it actually committed to memory,
Right.
right? And so this is what we mean when we say crawl and index. Okay, let's move on to the next.
Oh yeah, and another one for this. Whenever you do the site search, you can also see some of the pages that you don't want to see there. Like for example, if you have a thank you page there that you're not supposed to be seeing.
Or a WP content
Right,
page,
yeah.
like or resources pages, because these also see the folders inside your website.
Yeah, and another good example for that are paid content. If you have a paywall behind your
Right.
content, you don't want them to appear on search.
Right.
People could get your content for
Right.
free instead of them having to buy your
Right.
content.
Or any user content that's supposed to be behind a username and a password,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Where users put their personally identifiable information. You don't want those pages to get indexed. Okay. So let's move on, right? What do you do in terms of technical SEO in order to make sure that you have an opportunity of ranking on Google's first page? First things first, all of the crawl on the website is managed by a little file in the folders of your website called the robots.txt file. And they're essentially enter and do not enter commands, right?
Mhm.
Like that's what they are. So they are enter and they are authorized personnel only commands
Right,
inside your website. I mean, it literally is just a text file. But before the bot scans the folders inside your site, it will look for the robots.txt file first, right? And so the easiest way to manage the way a bot behaves in your site is by configuring your robots.txt files. Okay, pro tip. If there are conflicting commands inside your robots.txt file, like let's say here you said, do not index or do not crawl thank you page, and at the bottom you said crawl thank you page. In the presence of two conflicting commands, last command
last
wins, right? So it's important to understand that. Like you might say, oh no, why is it not scanning this? Here's a command line precisely that says yes, scan it. But 50 lines down, it might say no, don't scan it, right? And so when there are conflicting commands in your robots.txt file, the last command wins. Next, canonicals. What are canonicals? In the age of the panda, in the age of the hummingbird, and even before, content is king, right?
Right.
The most powerful ranking factor on your website is your content. And what you want to be doing is telling Google, I am the author of the content of this site. This domain is the author of the content of this site. And yes, I am making a declaration, at the risk of perjury, that I did not copy, I did not rip off this content from
This is
anybody.
mine.
Right. A canonical is a great way to declare to Google that content is original and that you are the first to publish it. Right. So a canonical is just you saying, hey, Google, this is my original content. Now, another thing that you can do in terms of technical SEO is enabling caching on your website. Okay, take note, caching. We're not talking about Google's cache, right? We're talking about the caching on your website. What you're essentially doing is you're setting instructions on your website that certain elements can be downloaded and saved inside a user's PC versus them having to download your entire website each time they visit. It just improves the speed of the website. More on that like later. But caching is very powerful in terms of optimizing for site speed. The next one is structured data, like schema. The way I explain schema is imagine if the website was a theater stage, right? And in a theater stage, there are things in the foreground, there are things in the background, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But in order to focus the user's attention on the most important elements on a stage, you shine a spotlight on it. It doesn't matter whether it's in the foreground, doesn't matter whether it's in the background, where the spotlight goes, the eyeballs will follow, right? And in short, you're implying that the items in the spotlight are important at this given moment. Schema or structured data is like shining a spotlight on a specific element, like your address, like your phone number. Right, your business name, your operating hours, your product description, your pricing. So
Maps.
right. So structured data is like shining a spotlight on a specific element so that Google doesn't take the content for granted, because by default, Google values content like top and left, right? If the more to the top, the more powerful, the more to the left, the more powerful. But sometimes your address is on your footer, but that's a pretty important piece of information. And so structuring the data allows you to shine a spotlight so that Google can look at it and understand, oh, it's an address, right? Oh, it's a phone number. So that's pretty important.
And another analogy that you can use there is let's say you go to a children's party. Usually when you go to a children's party, they have all these name tags.
Right.
And you can identify each one. Oh, this kid is this one. This kid is a child, this one.
Right.
So it's basically you identifying which one of these are the most important persons in your party, or maybe let's say which one is a birthday celebrant.
Right. Oh, even better, right? Like which one is the birthday celebrant? That's actually a good one. That's a good analogy. So another way to manage the way a site crawls or a bot crawls your site is with an item called an XML sitemap. And we've got an illustration here to explain it. So by default, the bot will scan your website from top to bottom, from left to right. And whenever the spider, like whatever they call it, I just like to call it a bot. Whenever the bot scans the website, it tends to scan the content from top to bottom. And as soon as it encounters a link, it follows the link, right? And it goes to the next page. And as soon as it encounters a link, it moves to the next page. And then it encounters another link and then it moves to the next page. In short, that is the default crawl behavior.
Yeah, it's pretty random.
Yeah. Actually, I would say pretty random. The links guide the bots to where they need to go, right? By the way, it will still happen with or without XML sitemap, which is why interlinking is super important. But if you want to organize the way your site is crawled, like take, for example, do you guys remember the site colon example I gave earlier?
Right, yeah.
Right? So with a lot of websites, what happens is homepage, about, privacy policy, terms and conditions, end user licensing agreement, blah, 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 blah. Like pages that are not important, pages that will not get you customers. And then you're wondering like, why? Why are those the pages that are ranking? Right? And it's probably because they're in your footer, they're in your nav, they receive the most number of inner links, and you have no sitemap. But your most important pages will probably be your product category pages, your service category pages, your actual product pages, your actual service pages. And so what you want to do is you want to prescribe the order in which the bot scans the site, and that is by creating an XML sitemap. The best way to illustrate an XML sitemap is with the illustration on the right. That's not an XML sitemap. That is, Windows Explorer,
yes.
right? But I just wanted to give you guys an example of, because when you look at a website from a control panel, it looks like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you look at a website from a control panel, it looks like that. It looks like a drive with a bunch of folders, inside. And the XML sitemap can actually instruct the bot to go from folder to folder to folder to folder to folder to folder to folder, so that you can prioritize which pages are more important and which pages are less important, right? So that's a wrap for technical SEO. There will be a full-fledged technical SEO conversation after this. But for now, this is probably 80-90% of what you would need to explain to a client whenever you do an SEO page. Okay, so let's talk about the next pillar. Pillar number 2.
Pillar number 2, on-page SEO. This is what already happens on your website itself. So from here, you already talk about the keyword selection. So whenever you pick keywords, you would always want to pick keywords that are relevant to what you're actually trying to serve.
Right.
So let's say you own a pet shop, you wouldn't want, and your pet shop has a dogs for sale page.
Right.
You wouldn't want that dogs for sale page to have a keyword that says cats for sale, because that
Right.
already contradicts with each other. So whenever you search for a keyword, you have to make sure the relevancy of that keyword to the page
Right.
is actually on point.
The way I like to talk about keyword selection is ideas, right? When I talk to a brand, when I talk to businesses and I pitch SEO, because I do still pitch SEO like some of you guys do, I ask the brand, what ideas do you want to rank for? What ideas do you want to attract users for, right? And I try to explain keyword selections are like picking which promises you make,
Right.
because search engine SEO is about is about picking an idea and then satisfying that idea on your web page, right? So which in short, in the SERPs, you're making a promise, and then on the page, you are fulfilling that promise. Right? Keyword selection is super important. Like I can't even stress, and that's why there will be an entire episode dedicated to this, but I can't even stress how important keyword selection is. It is sort of make or break for your strategy. The right keyword selection can get you visitors in 6, 8, 12 weeks. The wrong keyword selection can get you 0 in 2 years. But it's about picking which battles you're going to fight. It's about picking which ideas you want to be relevant for, and what promises you want to keep on the content on your site. Right now, once you've made the right keyword selection, then you then move on to making that keyword present inside your site. So walk us through that, Jerry.
So the next thing would be thinking about the keyword. Oops, sorry about that. Thinking about how to match your URL with the keyword that you're trying to
Right.
use.
Because it's the first clue,
It's the
right?
first clue, yeah. So again, going back to that example, dogs for sale, you can't really talk about cats in that page. So another thing about picking keywords here, some of your clients might think that this keyword has 1,000 searches. Maybe this is a good keyword for your page. Not necessarily all the time.
Right.
So there are going to be some techniques that you would want to remember when you're doing your keyword selection.
Right. Let's take your example, right?
Uh-huh.
But I wouldn't say for sale. I'm a parent, right? So I'm very sensitive to dogs for sale.
Adoption.
Right.
Let's go with
Great.
adoption.
Dogs for adoption, right?
Yeah.
Like let's take this as an example. So you've got your client is a dog adoption site,
Mhm.
right? And of course you want to rank for dog adoption, dogs for adoption,
Mhm.
right? Like you want to rank for that. And it looks like a great idea because the search volume is 4,000 a month, right? Let's say, so looks like a good idea. Is it? You take a look at your next competitor and you realize they've got an authority score of 57, they've got 2,000 backlinks, and they're ranking for pet adoption across several variations, right? Then it doesn't sound like a good idea. Like meaning the people you're going to compete with, you cannot win. So what you do is, so what kind of dogs do you put up for adoption, right? So if you can't win
The more
pet
generators.
adoption or dog adoption, then you try to go for golden retrievers for adoption, corgis for adoption, huskies for adoption. Adopt a husky, adopt a golden,
Mhm.
right? Adopt a corgi, adopt a German shepherd. Don't adopt a German. Adopt a German shepherd. Adopt a Malinois. So you might want to go for what seem like the longer tail, more specific variations, because then you might realize the hardworking competitor that's been there for years may not have been as diligent with dog breeds, right? And they're the easier ones to win. And your client might say, but that only has 90 searches a month. But that only has 70 searches a month. Yeah. But a user that types in adopt a golden, adopt a German shepherd is further down the sales funnel than the person that Googled adopt a dog, right?
Because they're already specific
They
in what
already
they want.
they already semi know what they want,
Mhm.
right? So that's super important. Like when you do your keyword selection. So once you've picked out your keyword selection, the first clue you give Google is, does that keyword exist in the URL? So if you say adopt a husky, then put adopt a husky or huskies for adoption inside your URL. First clue, right? Continue.
Next up, we want to also take care of creating the silo structure, meaning we want to make sure that whenever we do topic ideation, the topic outline is
Right.
the
Ideas are
topic
related to each other,
right.
right?
The
So,
topic outline
so
makes sense.
let's say you're not a dog adoption website, you're a pet adoption website,
yeah.
right? And then in your pet adoption website, you'll have categories, dogs, cats, fish, right? Let's say. What? I don't know.
I don't know if that exists.
Never know. But let's say fish,
Mhm.
right? And in your dog category, you've got golden, husky, corgi, terrier, collie, right? Like because those ideas are related, Google understands that you are creating what we call an idea silo or an idea architecture. And by having those subcategories inside the dog category, you're helping the dog category rank.
Right.
Because Google understands that you've got all of these different topics there. But, don't put in Corgi, Golden, Husky, German Shepherd, Persian,
Siamese.
right? Like, then you're breaking your silo structure. Now, the reason this matters is because in the more recent version of the Google algorithm, context matters. It's called the latent semantic index. And when you group a bunch of pages and a bunch of ideas together, all in a structure, Google rewards the parent idea, right? So that's why that matters. Now, another thing that I mentioned earlier is some technical elements are applied in on-page because they're not crawl and index impacting, they are quality impacting, right? And one of those is Core Web Vitals. Right. So talk to us about Core Web Vitals, Jerry.
Core Web Vitals, these are the scores that come up in your page feed insights if you're looking at them.
Right.
So it's usually the scores before that we report as page speed, but now Core Web Vitals are one of the main
Right.
metrics
Right.
making your website rank. So if you
Right.
have those scores really good, you tend to rank a lot higher.
Right. And there are 6, but there are only really 3 that are important, right? For me, it's the largest contentful paint or the first contentful paint. But most of the time I pay attention to the LCP more than the FCP. But the largest contentful paint, that means the amount of time it takes for the user's window to load the first loadable page of your site, right? The next one is the content layout shift. Like, what does that mean?
It means whenever you load a site, how many elements tend to move around when you were trying to load a
Right.
page.
Page is fully rendered and elements are still moving around, right? Like, it's one of those trick buttons in the 90s where you go like, click here,
Click here to label.
here. Like, it's sort of like that, right?
Right.
So the CLS just means, are the elements still moving after the page is rendered? And then I think the last one is the last important one is the first input delay, right? So what does that mean?
If I tend to have a little bit of confusion with that still. But
Yeah, essentially, it's when the element is present and when you interact with it, it starts to work.
okay,
Right?
thank you.
Like, so take, for example, the hamburger menu appears and the page is still rendering, but the hamburger menu has already appeared, right? So it's a
Correct.
question of, does it wait for the first full contentful paint before I can press the menu button? And,
right,
from the
okay,
time
okay.
from the time the hamburger menu loads to the time I can actually press it and it cascades down is
Time
the
to-
first input delay.
So it's the time before you can make it.
Yeah, the time the element is
Interactable.
rendered to the time you can start playing with the element that
Okay.
got rendered, right? So that's an example. Like, as we know with ads, like,
Right.
my God,
So next up, mobile optimization, because a lot of people are already using their phones.
right?
And Google actually indexes the mobile version of your website first.
Yes.
So that's really
Right.
important.
Google has been appealing to us since 2014 about them prioritizing the mobile index, right? There was even a joke event in the world of SEO called Mobilegeddon in April 2015,
Right, yeah,
right?
remember.
But it's because Google foresaw that eventually mobile traffic will overtake desktop traffic. And it did in November 2015, right? We all officially started browsing more on our mobile devices than we did on our desktops. So mobile optimization is super important because the first index, the first memory Google has of your brand and your business is what you look like on a mobile device before it refers to what you look like on a desktop device.
So there are a lot more on the on-page side of things. Mobile, we just talked about that. Core Web Vitals.
Yeah, we also talked about that. It's, for me, it's a quality metric, right? Like, yes, it's a technical fix, but because Core Web Vitals actually do improve your chances of ranking, we put it in our on-page assessment, not in our technical assessment.
Yeah, and more of the difference of that, technical tends to be more of a background thing, and you don't really see it. Core Web
Right.
Vitals, whenever you look at your website,
The user experience.
user experiences.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Optimization, the optimization stuff we're gonna also talk about in content, but a lot of the things here, URLs, very important. Keywords in URLs tend to still work today.
Agreed.
Breadcrumbs, it involves also interlinking
Right.
between
It's
your
that
pages.
navigational trail that appears usually on the top left side of the page.
Yeah,
More
see,
common to
home
e-commerce.
services,
Because I mean,
products.
yeah, because I mean, in an e-commerce page, there are multiple ways to navigate into a specific product.
Right, yeah. A laptop can also be a gaming laptop.
Right, right. Or let's say a watch, right? You could have gotten there from gifts for him, accessories, watches. You could have gotten there from watches, brands, men, right? So sometimes there are a lot of ways to navigate to a specific product, and the breadcrumb just shows the users how they got there in the first place.
And next up, we have the meta title, which is basically the title that appears on the search, the blue text that
Right.
appears on the
It's
search.
called a meta title because it's the title of your page in a search engine, not the title of your page per se. The title of your page per se is
H1.
correct.
So the H1 is the header text. Usually it's the bigger text when you're
The single most powerful content on your page because it's located to the top and to the left, and it's huge.
right.
You can't miss it. Okay.
First 100 words. The reason why we always say this is because the first 100 words, the first content, apart from the H1 that Google sees, we tend to put the most important keywords in the first 100 words.
Right. Because I mean, it's not a riddle, right? You're not creating content for a riddle. Like
Right.
if you write a page about coffee,
You're not gonna put coffee
you
downstairs.
would put coffee as word number 1097,
No.
right?
Like put it at word number one.
right. Your ending is gonna be, oh, and if you haven't guessed, this
Coffee.
page is talking about coffee. What?
What's the need to be dramatic?
Exactly. So don't be coy, right? Put it there.
And lastly, we have alt text, which is basically what you put as a property for images.
Correct.
When they load, whenever they don't load, this alt text shows up. This is also an opportunity to put in keywords if they actually fit the image, but we don't usually recommend putting in keywords if they don't fit.
Right.
And moving on, to the next ones, latent semantic index.
Yeah.
We already
Well,
passed
or
through that.
I guess let's give them some context in terms of why we separated the previous one and the current one,
Right,
right? The previous slide is talking about some really old school SEO metrics. The H1, the
H1.
URL, the meta title, right? Back then, the meta keywords, which don't work anymore. The keyword presence in the first 100 words, the alt text, all of these appeal to the algorithm's keyword density element. But these things appear to the algorithm's quality element. So not only does Google try to figure out if you're relevant based off of the keyword presence, it tries to find out, does this guy care about his users, right? Like, does this web owner put value on the content of this page? And so these are latent semantic indexing metrics. So take, for example, schema. We talked about this earlier, right? Your website is a stage. If the element is important, shine a spotlight on it. And you can do that by doing micro formats and JSON LD. I personally still prefer micro formats because I'm a Gen Xer. Right? A lot of people prefer JSON LD. I ain't got nothing against them, right? Like JSON LD away. But use one at least. The next one, multi-content formats. In an experiment we ran in, if I'm not 2016 or 2018. In an experiment we ran against 130 websites way back in 2016. We tried to experiment. Remember, back in 2016, the most important influencer of whether or not Google scans you frequently, indexes you frequently, is your page rank, right? Like the more authoritative you are, the more frequently Google pays you a visit. But we wanted to find out, is there anything else that influences that other than page rank and links? Because links influence caching rate. So we did an experiment on content formats. We had 130 websites. We put all text on them. We split them apart. We put images and text on some, and all of a sudden they started indexing from like greater than 30 days to greater than 10 days. We split apart that sample, and then now we put in text, image, and video. Right? And all of a sudden they started indexing in less than 10 days, right? Which we thought, oh, interesting. And then we tried text, image, downloadable, right? And we started indexing somewhere between 3 to 7 days. Terrific, all without a raise in page rank, right? Remember, these are pages with random page ranks. And then in the last experiment, we did text, video, image, downloadable, ad, right? And we started indexing in like 7 to 10 days. So it increased and go like, okay, no,
Oh,
No
it's
ads.
not, no ads.
no ads. Right. So, okay, that's not helping. No ads. So, multi-content formats, I think, is a recommendation only SEO Reseller does, because to my knowledge, we're the only ones that actually did an empirical experiment on it. Right.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons we always recommend is to make sure that people are actually interacting with what you're delivering to them.
Right.
Because who would want to read a wall of text in 2022?
Right. 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 Nobody wants to read a word vomit. Excuse my language. Right. So the next is interlinking. Why does that matter, Jerry?
Whenever you do interlinking, you give a signal to Google that this is a page that's relevant to what you're currently looking
Right.
at. So when you have a link going to another page, you tend to get this idea that, oh, Google, this next page is also related to this. When Google, as mentioned earlier in the crawling concepts, whenever Google goes to that page, they're gonna crawl that again, look for the next link.
Okay. Can I give a potentially more vulgar sample?
Yeah, please.
What is Kim Kardashian's most important asset?
Oh my God. Of course.
Right. Okay. So you know which one
Yeah.
it is, which body part it is, right?
Yeah.
So what does she do? What does she do with it? Does she hide it? Does she put it inside a keg?
No, she
Right?
does not.
Right. She flaunts
She
it.
flaunts it, yeah.
She brings attention to it.
Mhm.
When you interlink to one of your pages, this is precisely what you're doing. You are flaunting that page. You are driving attention to that page. And if what Google is thinking is, if you are proud of that page, bring attention to it, right?
No use
And-
hiding it, yeah.
Right. And a page that receives a lot of interlinks is the one where Google understands, okay, so you think that page of yours is the one that is the most relevant for that idea, right? Interlinking. This is why I take, for example, for my agency, I don't rank the same page for SEO company and SEO services, right?
So they have to serve the
Because the
different idea.
context is different,
Right,
right?
yeah.
I've got a page that can satisfy the search, the SEO company query, and I've got a page that satisfies the SEO services query, and it's done separately, right? And so whenever I say SEO services, I point to one page. When I say SEO company, I point to another page. But I never mix, right? I don't confuse Google by saying, oh, SEO company, oh, and also SEO services, right? And also what is SEO, right? I never point just because the word has SEO doesn't mean I pointed to that one SEO page, right? Because that page is not capable of fulfilling all of the promises. Okay, now the next one is freshness, because like I said earlier, there are things that you can do that can entice Google to scan your site frequently, right? And one of those things, so one of them is your page rank, the authority of your website. The other one is having multiple content formats. The third one is freshness. Do you update the content on your website? Do you care enough about your users to give them fresh content, to give them updated content, right? And there are samples of freshness, right, Jeriel?
Yeah, whenever you have new blogs, you would have
Yeah.
a featured section there.
Right.
And if let's say you had a blog before that's called SEO Trends in 2021, now we're going into 2023. Why not update that for 2023?
Correct.
New links, of course, if you have new pages and you want to flaunt that new page about 2023, link to that page.
Right.
User-generated content, usually these are the reviews. If you're a product site, feature them.
Yeah. The king, in my opinion, of user-generated content, Amazon. Right? Just take a look at the sheer amount of user-generated content inside Amazon. You've got your typical product page with the typical description. Sometimes the description is manufacturer provided.
Right.
But at the bottom, user reviews, user questions, user answers, star ratings, right? All of that beautiful user-generated content makes the page relevant and refreshes the content on the page.
Right.
So all of those are super relevant. Okay, so we're gonna talk about pillar 3. I'm gonna take this one because it's ooh content.
Yeah.
Yes, ooh content. It's my thing. This is my shtick. Okay. Part of the reason I like talking about content, and we have already had a topic that sort of discussed content on KEX, and there will be another content that talks about. There will be another session that talks about content in an algorithmic light, but content remains your most powerful ranking factor. Since the Panda algorithm, your content is your most powerful ranking factor. Up for argument, pre-Panda, whether that was true. But your content is your most powerful ranking factor. Now, I will separate content into two things. There are technical content considerations, there are algorithmic content considerations, there are quality content considerations. Let's talk about the technical content considerations first. Do you optimize your meta tags? Do you put the keywords in them, right? An optimized meta title is about, a little less than 65 characters. It actually is a range. Normally you can fit in 65 to 72 characters, but Google actually optimizes by pixel count, and we're not robots, right? So I would say stick to 60 to 65 characters and you're good. Your title should appear in full. It doesn't end with that nasty ... right? So that's one. Two, optimize your meta descriptions. Even though your meta descriptions are not ranking factors, these are like trailers to your movie, right? I cannot even tell you how many movies I've watched just because I got enticed by the trailer, only to sunk cost while I was watching the movie, right? So your meta description is your best tool to improve your click-through rate, to encourage a user to come to your website. Next, your keyword to URL match. What does this mean? Remember how I said your meta title, your meta description, these are your promises, and your web pages, these are how you fulfill those promises. A keyword to URL match means, we go to the bottom, you match informational keywords to informational pages. You match branded keywords to branding pages. You match commercial keywords to commercial pages, and you match transactional keywords to transactional pages. So let's go upward, right? Transactional first, because it's the simplest. If I Googled Hawaii flight deals, or flight deals to Hawaii, the page I'm expecting to go to is a booking page, right? To a transactional page. I am not expecting to land in a blog with 2,000 words telling me how to spot a great deal for flights to Hawaii, right? That's not what I'm looking for. That's not my search motivation. I'm in an I want to buy, right? So transactional keywords, simple product page, original content, use the H1 properly, don't rip off, don't use your distributor provided content, right? But these are what your transactional keywords are. So when you've got like buy, deals, discounted, these are your transactional pages. Commercial pages are inquiries like SEO services. I would argue SEO company might not be commercial. That might be informational or branded in nature. But commercial keywords would be SEO company rates, SEO company packages, because they denote a commercial intent for the user, right? Like the user wants to transact something in the future. And for commercial pages, we recommend a word count of about 300 to 500 words, because that's sort of the word count you need to build desire with the user. A commercial page's objective is not to educate a user. A commercial page's purpose is to pull on the emotional heartstrings of the user, to get a user to buy, inquire, ring the phone number, send an inquiry, right? But a commercial page's intent is to acquire customers, not make a sale, acquire customers. Next, you've got informational pages. Again, going back to a test we did against 100 random keywords, what we discovered was back then, Google tended to rank pages that had an average of 1,300 and some words for 100 random informational keywords, right? And this is why, and we're talking like this test was like 7 years ago. And that's when we decided, you know what, for informational keywords, we need content of over 1,000, right? And so if you're still talking, if your potential clients are still talking to SEO companies that still say add 250 to 300 words, get out of here, right? The word count has a contextual impact on the page. Next one is for navigation. These are just branded pages. As long as you make the brand the preeminent content, you're fine. There's no required word count. Okay. But this is what we mean when we say keyword to URL match. The purpose of the keyword must match the page, and the keyword, the volume of the content must match the intent you're trying to satisfy. Now let's talk about content quality metrics. What you're looking at here is the hub and spoke model for content. When you produce content, don't just produce content because your boss says so, right? Like make them all work together in a strategy. And I think we talked about this in the content strategy KEX before, where if I had a keyword or an idea that I wanted to win in the informational sense, so let's say keystone one, let's say keyword idea is give me a
Let's go back to that adoption thing.
pet adoption.
Pet adoption.
Okay, dog adoption.
Yeah,
Let's be a little less competitive. Okay, keyword ideas. But we wanted a more specific. We wanted a more specific topic, right? So let's say adopting a golden retriever. Adopting a golden retriever. Clearly not easy to rank for that. There are already thousands of pages that have great quality content about adopting golden retrievers. Great. So your keystone is your skyscraper, your most valuable piece of content. This might be 2,000 to 3,000 words. And you're going to go through what to my keystone content might be what to expect when you're expecting a golden retriever.
Yeah, right. Smart,
Right.
Catchy, very
What to
catchy.
expect when you're expecting a golden retriever. And it might be, and you might say, the ultimate 5-year guide to raising a good boy, to raising a good golden retriever, right? So that's my keystone. Cluster pieces of content. I usually try to make these evergreen. Like they cannot be. My blogs tend to be the ones that are freshness based. So let's talk cluster first. Evergreen content. My cluster one might be top 5 things to watch out for with golden pup behavior. Right. My cluster 2 might be the top 5 vaccines you cannot miss when owning a golden retriever pup, right? And 3 might be 5 best behaviors to train your golden retriever pup on.
Yeah.
2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Those would be good
That's-
topics,
that's not
right?
changing.
Those would be good topics. My blog number 3 would be 5 top dog breeds in the US, right? And the golden retriever is always one of them. It's usually 1, 2, or 3, right? So it might be top dog breeds in the US in 2022. That might be 1, right? New training techniques for raising dogs in 2022. New training techniques for grooming dogs in 2022. Up and coming innovative dog toys in 2023, right? These are your blogs. And every time you mention golden retriever in your cluster and in your blog, you link them back to your keystone, making your keystone super powerful for the idea golden retriever. Makes sense, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's continue. So this is content strategy. Now, we talked about the algorithmic elements in content. Now, but let's talk about the quality elements in content. There are some things that signal whether your content is relevant for a specific topic. So first thing that Google looks at, is the keyword present, or are you being coy with the keyword? If you're trying to tell people, if somebody put in adopt a golden retriever, that's a pretty commercial / transactional intention, but probably commercial intent. And what I would do is I would land somebody on a page that says, welcome to our golden retriever adoption page. You will find our selection of X puppies that are waiting for good homes, right? Just introduce the page. It doesn't have to be 500 words worth of a golden retriever is a pretty big dog, last 13 years, color white to color light brown. You don't have to do that, right?
Yeah.
The person typed in adopt a golden retriever, right? They're not idiots. They know what they're looking for, right? So by telling them they're in the golden retriever adoption page, you are creating a sense of directionality. You're telling the user you landed in the page that will fulfill your search intent. So first things first, the keyword presence for directionality. Next, content originality. If you care about your users, you will produce original content for them, right? Because not only do you have to tell users, oh, you landed on the page, you landed on our golden retriever adoption page, but that's not the only thing the user wants to know, right? The user wants to know, okay, sure, you've got golden retrievers, but were you cruel to them? Are these tortured golden retrievers, right? Are these inbred golden retrievers? So not only do you have to tell the user what this page is, you sort of have to justify why they should adopt them from you, right? So, and this is what we mean when we say originality. If you care about your users, you're not just going to rip off somebody's content. You're going to produce content specifically to the audience you're talking to. Next, if that golden retriever page is important, then every time you say golden retriever, like in the blog structure we talked about, you link it back to your golden retriever
Right.
adoption page, right? So whenever you say golden retriever adoption, adopt a golden retriever, link it back to this page. Internal linking matters. It creates a virtual silo, so it creates a lot of context. Next, optimize your images and your videos. I would say don't go overboard on this, but what I will say, like specifically for images, it is more than half the time the culprit for a slow website.
Right.
Right. So always always render your images in the size a user's viewport will see it. Because I've seen websites where, the main image is like a megabyte. And then when they use it as a thumbnail on the homepage, it's still a megabyte. Right. And then when they use it at the bottom of the blog, it's still a megabyte. Like it doesn't have to be. Render a thumbnail, render a preview, and render a banner. It's not all that hard. So optimize your images to not slow down your websites. For videos, I would say embed them. Don't host them on your site, right? Because you're not Netflix.
You're not YouTube.
Right. You're not YouTube. Okay. And then the last bit, if you care about your users, refresh your content every now and then. Right. If you care about your users, create fresh content for them to consume. So let's talk about the pillar number 4, right? Because we don't have to jump into localization so much, but pillar number 4 is about link building. And we'll try to keep this short because there will be an entire session about link building later on. Okay. So talk to us about link building, Jeriel.
Link building, when you talk about link building, it's kind of like
We had this job title once upon a time, right?
Right, yeah. So remember like link building comments on websites?
Yeah, 13, 14, 15 years ago. SEOs were called link builders, right? Okay,
Right.
but let's go through this.
So when you have a strong link building portfolio for your website, you have these 3. You take note of these 3: authority, credibility, and relevance. It's kind of the same way like it works in real life. So when you look for a doctor for, let's say, a doctor for your cancer, you have one. Knock on wood.
Right.
So
Let's not use cancer. Pediatrician.
that's
Vet. Let's say okay.
That's
So let's say you're looking for a vet.
Right. Let's say you're looking for a vet. So you wanna know if that person is authoritative as a vet. Is he a new vet or is he only a
he's
vet
gonna-
by name?
It's gonna take care of your delivery. Right? Okay, so
Right.
vet, sure.
Are they credible? Do they have an actual license or are their licenses fake?
Right.
Were
so-
there any reviews about them?
Right. Just because they're called vets or us doesn't mean there are licensed veterinarians out there, right?
Right.
For all you know, everybody working there, surname is vet. And then there's no vet license, right?
And of course, relevance. If you're looking for a vet specifically for dogs, maybe you land in a veterinarian that actually just takes care of cats.
Right.
You don't want to end up being in that
Right.
situation. So you want to make sure that these are taken care of.
Right.
So,
The more links you have, the more authoritative you are, right? Like in short, in a vet, the more patients you have,
right.
right?
Yeah.
The more authority you have. It builds to your credibility because those users, those forums will probably write reviews about you.
Mhm.
And the more customers and reviews you get, the more relevant you become in the eyes of a search engine.
Right.
Right. Okay. Keep going.
So there are a lot of ways for you to get links pointing to your website. They tend to, by and large, be separated into 3 parts: earned, leased, or owned. Going into the earned links, natural links, they tend to be the less work.
You're a really good vet. People will write about you.
Right.
Right.
Outreach links, if you're a good vet, let's say you're just
Well,
starting.
outreach links, this is us. This is us, right?
Right.
Like, you don't want to wait 3 years to be natural. You don't want to wait till you're, I don't know, 1,000, your 1,000 customer. Then you hire an SEO company to outreach to other websites to generate a link back to you. But these are called earned links,
Earned, yeah.
right? Because there's no commercial relationship between you and the link producer. So that's why they're called earned. You don't control the website, you don't control the content, you definitely don't control the link, and that's why they're very natural.
Right. Next up are the leased links. You don't own the websites for these ones. So these are websites like Yelp, the Google Business profile
Correct.
is also part of that.
Facebook page,
Apple Maps, Facebook page, Twitter,
Twitter,
social media.
Twitter. Still cringe.
Right? So social media pages, any online property out there, you don't control the websites, but you can control the content that's in those websites. So for
Correct.
citations, you can
You don't
put your
control the technology, you don't control the name of the domain, but you control the content. 'Cause you
Right.
put it there.
so you put a link to your website, that's content, it's a backlink to your website.
Because it is a link,
It
right?
is a link, yeah.
Right? You go to Facebook and you can point a link back to your domain from your Facebook page. You go to YouTube and there are 3 places you can create a link from. The card that inserts the description of the video and your main homepage channel. Those are links. You go to Google My Business, you can put your website URL there. That's a
That's a
link.
link, yeah.
Free links. Leased assets.
And the last one are the owned links, which are basically the properties that you own. Let's say if you're a veterinarian website, you have a sister brand, let's say, for some reason, in your case, let's say you're only a vet for dogs. Let's say you have a sister that is a vet for cats. So if you, I would assume that you guys are like talking to each other.
Operating under the assumption you've got a good sibling relationship.
Right.
Why not link to each other?
Right. Because
Right.
those are also links.
Right.
Other owned assets, like let's
Yeah, I
say,
think the best example of this is sort of like the Time Warner ecosystem, right? Where CNN links to Cartoon Network, that links to Time Magazine, that links to now Discovery Plus,
Discovery, yeah.
right? Like that links to DC Comics, that links to DC Cinema, and so on and so forth, right? The Time Warner ecosystem all linked to each other. These are owned asset links. If you have them, why not use them? Like we are like this, right? Like SEO Reseller, TrueLogic, Axadra, and there's a bunch of businesses in the Axadra group. We link to each other, right? Because these are owned assets. Why not get your assets to amplify their value for each other? So so there might be people that ask, is that not a blog network? And the answer is no, because TrueLogic is not a blog. SEO Reseller is not a blog. Right? They are brands.
Yeah.
Okay.
and the plus one.
Yeah. So this one I'll make quick because I already had an entire tech session about this, right? But if your client or you yourself benefit from foot traffic, then localization might be a strategy you want to employ. This is a strategy for appearing on the snack pack, right? The local results. And it's super simple. Use local schema, shine a highlight on, put a spotlight on your address and make sure Google understands it. Optimize your Google business profile. It's another easy way for Google to associate a specific longitude, latitude location to you. And then, create local listings to reinforce that, like make sure your name, address, phone number are super consistent across Yellow Pages, Apple Maps, Yelp, Yahoo Local, Google Business Profile, and so on and so forth. So, and here's an example, right? Like here's an example of the snack pack where, and trade secret, it is so much easier to rank for the snack pack than it is to rank for organic. Where it might take me 6 months to get you to the first page of Google, it might take me 3 months to get you to appear on a snack pack. And optimizing for snack packs are easy. Just make sure that your name, address, phone number is consistent across all listings. Make sure that you fill in your primary business category. Make sure that your business hours are there, that you indicate your service area or what is known as your key home. Your website URL, please, because it's a leased asset. You can earn a link from it, right? The description of your business, because Google has good contextual understanding. And it's a great place to see your reviews, right? It's a great place to have your customer reviews.
And another thing, going back to that idea that this is a lot faster to rank for, the reason why, because look at the position where they are in the search results. So when people look at the search results, this is mainly the first thing that they see. Other than the ads.
Yeah, only an ad precedes the snapback, right? It's a great place to be. And I think in a study that was done by Backlinko, what's his name? Dean, right? Was it him? But in a study that he did, I think what's the name of the guy from Backlinko? But I think it was him where he did a test to find out is the CTR. I can't remember if it's Dejan, might have been Dan Petrovich, right? But one of these guys,
I think it was that privilege.
Maybe.
CPR, yeah.
So they did a test on do you get a worse CTR if you're in a snack pack than if you're the first organic result? And the results were in. No, you get precisely the same CTR as the first snack pack as you would if you were the first organic result. So it's a great way to earn that click-through rate. It's a great way to earn that traffic. So with that, we'll wrap up our pillars of SEO. And again, for some of these, I've already done localization, right? So but we are going to have dedicated topics on technical SEO, on page, content, and off page in the next few KEX sessions.